Hi guys, it's Paul from Locks in the City. So today's video I thought I'd do something a little bit different, something I haven't done, but I do get a lot of questions in regard to this. Now, there's going to be no right or wrong answer to this. This is going to all be based on my own personal preference and my own personal experiences, okay? The tools that I use are not necessarily going to be the same tools as the next person. So this is just purely to show the kit that I use. It's going to be in no personal set order. It's just going to be as I pick up the tools and show them on camera. The next person's toolkit will probably be totally different, but we're just going to go through it. I'll give a bit of an explanation about each of the tools. I won't be doing demos with the tools, but it's just more to show you what the sort of kit that I carry for my openings. So whether that be a domestic lockout, lost keys, commercial property need opening, estate agent as a property where tenants have vacated. This is the sort of situations where I use it. These tools are always in my van and are my go-to kit. Now I do have other methods which are there to cover in different situations, or if one of these tools don't work for whatever reason. So the main tools that I'm showing is just a small selection of what I carry. These are the go-to kit that I always rely on. So it wasn't worth getting everything in because this video would be extremely long. Now this is always in my pocket, so I thought I'd show this first. As you can see, the kit is heavily battered, worn, but it served me well. Now this is important to pretty much every locksmith when you first start out, is to get yourself a pick set. Now you do not need an expensive pick set. This is by no stretch of the imagination one of the most expensive out there. If I remember correctly, this cost me about £35 when I first started out. Now it's made by Majestic. It's not considered high-end, but I have tried high-end stuff, but I always end up coming back to these. Now I did have a 13-piece version of this when I first started, really enjoyed it, got on well with it, so then I invested in the 32-piece, I think this one was, but to be fair, it was just a lot of additional ones for that are copies in case you snapped any. A small variation of tension wrenches, and again, these over the years these adapt and you get different bits and pieces. Like, you know, this isn't a genuine Majestic part, I've inherited it from somewhere. There's all odds and ends, but this is always in my pocket. So this is always my first go-to kit. If I'm dealing with a cylinder or padlock, I'll give it a go with these. If I get no joy, then that's when I'll seek alternative methods, whether that be electric pick gun or some of the other tools I'm going to show. So you don't need to buy a super expensive pick set, okay? Now the opinions in this video are mine and mine only, okay? Now you don't have to agree with these, but that is probably one of the best investments that I think anyone can make, because if you're serious about going down the route of non-destructive entry, then if you haven't got one of these, then you're not going to get very far. So I'd always say, and most importantly, always get yourself a set of these. And as I said, don't need the most expensive set. The 13-piece set that's out there, I don't know, I think it's less than 20 quid or something like that, is well worth investing in. Now moving on, okay, now this isn't in the kit or in the format that it would be when you typically buy it. I've created my own storage case for this. Now this is my curtain pick, okay, this is been adapted to suit me, so everything in here isn't as you would normally buy it, okay. I have additional turners, cam turns for my wires, okay. This will cover my 3-lever, 5-lever, non-British standard and British standard locks. This is my go-to kit, okay. All the variation in different tips, some that I've adapted to work for different locks, so I can open up lever padlocks, 2-in-1 locks, normal curtains, mortise locks, okay. Now I'll try and keep everything together. This is set up because typically that's what I will use straight out the case, so that's always ready to go. I can just grab them two, that's me ready to go. But over the years, you know, you just have your own preferred method of setting up, and then down another layer here is what I've created with all the other additional bits. I've got different wires, the longer tips for locks that are further set into locks, spare cams, more wires, spare tips again for various things for me to adapt if I should need to, a spare body in case I ever need one. And then the latest addition, there's already a video I've done on this, is the new wires and Vectis tip. Now again, just having that in its kit on its own, and not having to go to the van for a separate tool, it's just worth it. When you're going to a job and you don't know what you're dealing with, you can just quickly grab this and my pick set if need be, if you're parked a little way. And I've pretty much got everything in here that is going to mean I only have to do one trip to get the tools, you know, and in theory I should be able to open everything. Now there's other variations of curtain picks. The reason I like this one is the versatility, as I've just shown with the different bits and pieces. But again, this is my own personal preference, because other people like to tell you that, you know, there's other picks out there. And of course, as with any tool, there's different variations, but this is my personal preference. Okay. Now, moving on, what should we go for next? Okay, so we're going to go for this. Now, I'm not going to explain too much on these because they are quite a security tool, believe it or not, although they look very basic. Now, yes, they're wires, curved wires on a handle. Okay, now some users who watch this video will know exactly what they are, but I don't wish to exactly say what they're for because this is going out in an open viewing platform. Okay, now these are all pretty much the same, other than there's one in here which is for a different make of lock. Okay, it has a different tip. All the other ones are pretty much the same tips as each other, just in variations of thicknesses and different handles that have been tried and tested. It's an old variation. Okay, this kit alone has made its money over and over and over and over again. Okay, and when you get into the buying the tools, a lot of people will try and make their own again, which is fine, nothing wrong with that. There's other variations of this, but again, I have done a video showing the difference in using these ones against a Chinese copy of it, and again, just to sort of give a opinion on why I choose these as opposed to the other ones. Okay, yeah, I know to some people this is going to be a bit alien because they're not going to know what they are, but they are essentially a bypass method. Okay, they bypass a particular type of lock, which then allows us to open the door without any damage whatsoever. Okay, so that again is in my kit, and that is, you can see again, a lot of the time that's kept in my trouser pockets. It's had a little bit of a beating, and when these are used, a lot of people are scared at how useful, well, I say useful, it's useful to me, but how scary it is to see these in action. A well worth investment. Now, again, this is bona fide Locksmith's material, supposedly. Okay, now it's very flexible, and is handy for not just an opening tool. Okay, this is handy for working out with your multi-slots if you need to locate bolts, how big the bolts are, various different uses for this, but the main thing is the bypass method that it's used for opening doors when they're not deadlocked. Now, if used properly, okay, and understand what you're trying to do with this, this is quite a lethal tool, really. And again, I think every Locksmith's arsenal is going to have this in their pockets. I do keep some that are a bit more much tattier than this. This is a brand new set I've probably had for a few years. I've not used, but they get a little bit tatty and a bit worn, and I keep them in my side pocket of my trousers. But again, I try not to use this because when a customer sees you using this, they typically think that they've been had upside down. They can come a little bit defensive when you've opened a door, and they sort of think, well, I could have done that. So I don't really use this for the method that it was intended for. Unless I'm on my own, or it is literally a case of a speed entry, then I would use this. But yeah, so that's something, again, that's kept close by. Now, following on from that, these are a tool for UPVC and composite doors. Now, I'm not going to go into great detail of how to use these, but these are ideal in a situation, for those of you that are going to understand, when a composite or a plastic door is not double locked. Okay, if they've got a lever pad set up, which means the external handle will pull down but only retracts the latches, then these tools are for that situation. If the door is deadlocked, or it's an auto deadlocking door, then these are of no use. Now, another tool that I'll come on to a little while is it used a method of going through the door to literally do what this does. Now, again, when a customer sees that other method being used, they feel a little bit cheated. They feel that, you know, what you've done they could have done, and then they sort of begrudge paying you the money. So I use these. Now, I had these in my van probably for 18 months, 2 years when I first bought them. Still in the packaging. I never got really around to use them. Wasn't really sure. Just one of them things you saw the wholesaler selling. I thought, well, I'm going to buy some. And then one day I just thought, I need to learn to use these. I kept seeing them in the packaging. I thought, well, I need to use them. And I found some information on them, and then I started to try and use them. And then once I found the technique in using these again, especially the grey one, I can't tell you how many times over that this tool has paid for itself. It is paid for itself multiple times. You're probably talking at least 100 times this tool has paid for itself, probably more, in all fairness. Now, it relies on, as I said, a method when the door is not locked. Okay, when a customer sees this isn't something that a customer feels that they could replicate. You know, it looks you know, a more engineered method of tool for opening. You know, it's more of a security tool to the customer when you use that, so they don't tend to make any quibbles when you've opened the door with them. And again, with composite doors, if the door allows, if the door isn't too tight, then this is another one. But again, it's a tool that I use these without even thinking, so definitely worth an investment for UPVC and composite doors. What should we show next? Okay, now again, there's going to be a couple of variations of different tools out there. Okay, now I've done a separate video on these tools, but this is again one of my go-to opening tools. Okay, don't really need to go into great detail of what they're for. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but for cylinders, whether it be warrants or normal entries for people that are locked out, who've lost keys, etc., alongside the tension wrenches, typically in my pick set, I will use this. So this is one of my go-to tools. This is my #1 option. Now, in the other video I've already gone through this, I'm not going to go into too much detail again. And then this is the Went version, basically a different style, but the outcome is exactly the same. Okay, so that's another variation. So between these two, these are my top two. These are my chosen methods for that particular method of entry. And again, you know, that's the one that I'll typically always go. But if I'm going down the route of using one of these tools, I will typically carry both to the door, just in case that one doesn't go. I've got other variations which are as I say, in another video. So if you want to see them, if you go and have a look at my EPG video, I've done with all the different guns that I've owned and used and my personal preferences. Okay, so let's go for this one. Now, this is again another tool that I think pretty much every locksmith will own or own a variation of this tool. Okay, now I would sort of say it's almost criminal not for you to have one of these, only on the basis that they're a super handy tool. I couldn't tell you how many openings this thing has done. Now this is my original one that I've owned from new for since I ever got an interest in locksmithing, and I was able to obtain one of these. So this is my original kit, although it's not in the original case. The actual kit inside is the original. I've not had to replace any of it. Now, prior to me having some of the other tools that I've already shown, this was the only kit I had for doing some of my openings. And you know, now there's, as I said, there's other variations of this tool out there. This was the most popular, and still is to this day probably the most popular one out there. And some other companies are making adaptations that work nice with this tool. And to me, it's one of them things, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And I think that this is why this has remained probably one of the most popular kits out there. Now, this particular part that comes with the tool, for the letterbox tool, I use these instead of that. Now, what this was intended for, when in conjunction with the handle and the bars, this was then used as a method for the opening, and it is when customers saw this method being used that they would then kind of get a little bit disheartened and feel that they've called you out to do a job, and having realised what you've done, the method you've used, they then get a little bit protective and sort of think, I could have done that, and then they start to feel that you're you know, that begrudge paying you. So that's where these come in, and I don't seem to ever get any issues when I use them. So I don't really use that tool anymore, and the same with the cord. Now this was a bypass method for opening a particular type of lock, which now is pretty much redundant. I don't ever really use that. I'll keep it in there because there's always going to be a use for that at some point, and I'll just keep a spare mirror which I need to just glue in. Actually, I'm going to leave that out so I remember to glue it. That for keeping the letterbox open. Okay, now this part was initially designed for higher end type of lock, the Ingersoll and Banham. I have used it a couple of times out in the field when I was living in London, so it has its purpose, but again, it's just one of them things that although you don't use it often, you'll be grateful that it's in the kit. But it does come in the kit when you buy it anyway, so it's not an extra. Now this part was extremely useful, the snip button lifter for when one's dropped. I really like this. You know, I found it's quite, I'll say it's ingenious, because you're not trying to use this to do the same method, which would be a little bit harder. This has got a nice feel to it when you're using it, and you can feel everything that you're doing. So again, I mean, just this part alone with this kit has opened many doors in a situation that could get quite messy. And when I go to some jobs where someone else has been prior, and you see the damage that's left behind, and sometimes it is because they're not really a locksmith, they're a handyman, and they've not had this kit, or they've not had the experience or knowledge for someone who has got this kit in how to use this properly. But if you learn to use all of these parts, you'll definitely make your life a lot easier. Now these parts I don't really ever use. You can see they've got a bit weathered, because obviously locksmithing, you don't have the joy of working in the drawer all the time, so things do get a little bit rusty and a bit weathered. But you know, for me, these are tools of the trade, you know, so they're not always going to be showpieces. They're going to get grubby and marked, as you can sort of see. I bought the new case purely because my old one broke, and you can buy the cases and parts additionally. So as I said, the case isn't the original. But yeah, and then to run alongside this bit of kit, I purchased this. So for UPVC doors, for holding open the bristles, the brushes, so that you can see through clearly. So that would go through a letterbox, open up, and then you've got a nice view through there. Again, something that is really simple in design, but is an absolute godsend when you need it at night time, or you've got your vision is impaired because of bristles and everything else. You know, this is well worth investing in. People make their own variations of it or use a bit of card and etc. All I would say is just spend, I don't know what these were, 15, 20 quid, whatever it was. Spend the money and buy one of these and you will not regret it. Okay, and then again, this bit of kit, which is part of the GJ range, they sell out very quickly. They're made in small batches, but when they're made, they're pretty much sold before they're even made. This is probably Gen 2 or 3. There's been various different versions of this over the years, but this one's still going strong. I have newer versions of it, and I always keep a spare because I'd be lost without this. But again, not something I'm going to go into too much detail, but those of you in the know-how will understand what this is for. Okay, the click of the button, this will rotate. It's my bad, I think the battery's just died, is it? Oh no. There we go. Okay, this is again a tool that has made its money and one of them tools that you are so glad to have in the kit. Now it works in conjunction with this tool. Okay, and as I said, I'm not going to go into details what it is. Those of you who understand or have an inkling will know exactly what it's for. But I just don't want to advertise everything and make it too simple. Okay, so in a situation like that, you're not having to use that green paracord anymore. You have something, you know, that you can utilize, and it's as easy as just pressing a button. Okay, now I'd be extremely lost without that, especially when it's pitch black at night and you've got a customer who needs to get in and they've lost the keys, and you don't have to make any noise. There's no reason you would have to drill the lock and make excessive noise. It's a silent entry tool. You're not going to cause a disturbance or wake anybody up. And again, it's for just convenience. When you get a situation where you've got a system where it's extremely hard to pick for whatever reason, at least with this, you haven't got to worry about that. You've got a method of opening that isn't going to cause you any problems. So yeah, so that's high up on my list of tools. We got anything else I need to demo? No, I believe that's it. So that is my go-to kit, guys. So it's been a bit of a long video, and if you've got any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Please like, share and subscribe, and click the notification bell if you wish to know of any other videos that are upcoming. And yeah, and thanks for watching, and stay humble. Cheers, guys.